Hi, everyone. I'd first like to take this opportunity to thank TASA for selecting me for the Paul Hanna Lecture Series, and thank each of you that are out there on YouTube to take the time to watch this lecture. In the next 50 minutes, I'll begin this talk by sharing some autobiographical information to offer insights into my perspective on the world. From there, I'll delve into how I transform those experiences into art. And lastly, I'll introduce you to some of my work that examines the interplay between art, politics, and social media. I'll do this through the lens of Guy Debord's renowned piece, The Society of the Spectacle, published in 1967, which was a critique of culture that he saw as preoccupied with images and appearances at the expense of truth and genuine experience, and how his thoughts and ideas still resonate in today's cultural landscape. Place of birth, country of origin, nationality. These standard markers of identity all fall short for me and are not really adequate descriptors. I was born in Kuwait. I held an Indian passport until a few years ago, and most of my life I have spent in the United States. I am an immigrant. These are the two passports that I've held in my life. At a time when the notion of immigrants is being questioned in the US and globally, I think it's important for me to announce publicly that I too am an immigrant. How this country thinks about immigrants is how you should think about me. How this country treats immigrants is how you should treat me. This is the house that I grew up in India. Half of my life has been spent here, in a small little village on the southwest coast of India in a state called Kerala. And the other half was spent in the US. I would go to school in India one year and the US in the other. That kid in the red circle is me. I grew up thinking that I was an all American kid. This was the first time that I remember being the other during the Iran hostage crisis in 1979. It was the first instance that my classmates started seeing me as someone outside themselves. I became Iranian in their eyes. I became the enemy. I became the other. This sense of external factors implicating me as the other continued with the US bombing of Libya in the 80s, to our involvement in the first Gulf War in the early 90s, to the ramifications of the events after 9/11. Each decade of my life has been filled with moments that situate myself as the other within our American culture. And these are but a few examples of how my identity was always malleable to the dominant culture. I point this out to remind everyone that it is always our immigrant populations that get villainized when we engage in operations abroad or have economic hardships, or as we recently saw with our Far East Asian communities and the coronavirus pandemic. So, this experience throughout my life has made me keenly aware of looking at our broader culture with open eyes, to notice what causes these places of demarcation, to try and understand what makes one an outsider. This awareness also clues me into what aspects of culture interest me in making art. Maya Angelou once eloquently pointed out a significant cultural shift that happened to us. Back in the day, our leaders used to call us the American citizen or the American voter. Through time, that nomenclature changed to us being described by our leaders as the American consumer. This notion of us being consumers is something that I've been thinking about for some time, and it finds its place within my work. One consistent aspect to all my bodies of work is that I use culture as the source material for the art that I make. By that, I mean the times in which we live. Some artists use the landscape or the still life as their subjects of interest. For me, it's the now, the present. And in my opinion, we are certainly living in interesting times. Opiate of the masses seen here is a custom neon sign that references the Karl Marx phrase, religion is the opiate of the masses. The actual quote from Marx states, religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. I updated the quote by substituting religion with social media and designed it as a neon sign mirroring Facebook's fonts and color. Beyond this change, there's a deeper layer of meaning that explores the connection between the virtual realm of social media and the real world opioid epidemic we are grappling with today. The works I will be sharing with you are influenced by the intersection of social media, art, and politics to speak about our collective narcissism. The promise of social media was to create a more connected world where one has friends who can engage immediately and directly with each other in a quick and efficient manner. What we could not predict was the weaponization of social media by individuals and governments to pursue shameless self promotion, cultural manipulation, and the dissemination of misinformation. Through this work, I am attempting to question the various uses of social media within culture while acknowledging its positive and negative attributes. It is our need to connect with others that draws us into the social media sphere, while our fear of that connection keeps us in that safe virtual space. What does our online engagement say about ourselves as a society? In this virtual world, is the individual reduced to a product defined by their online presentation? My art serves as a cultural mirror to raise these questions. In addition, I'm going to attempt to weave some of my work through the writing of Guy Debord in his The Society of the Spectacle, written in 1967, about a consumer driven culture that is saturated with images specifically made for consumption, which prevents a populace from having authentic experiences. Now, defining what is an authentic experience may be in itself a challenging dilemma, which could be a semester's worth of a class. But what I think he was trying to say is that capitalism is a machine that requires constant consumption from its people to continue. And the end goal becomes that act of consuming versus having substantial human connections with others. In other words, Debord feels that the spectacle is the method used by capitalism to distract and pacify a society. The spectacle requires two complicit things: the spectacle or the event or object of desire, and the spectator. In contemporary society, I believe that this is not a passive activity, but is an active exchange between the two, the spectacle and the spectator. Debord states the reigning economic system is a vicious circle of isolation. Its technologies are based on isolation and they contribute to that same isolation. From automobiles to television, the goods that the spectacular system chooses to produce also serve it as weapons for constantly reinforcing the conditions that engender lonely crowds. This work has often been referred to as a map to our contemporary times. Although it was written almost 50 years ago and influenced by post war capitalism in Europe, when people began to have access to more goods through markets being open to importation of products from other countries, this also began a time when people started consuming past their basic needs, and the act of consuming became an end in itself. De Boer started wondering about this and offered questions for us to consider and watch out for. In other words, he was interested in people exploring truth and actual experiences in the face of a society that he believed was only interested in the act of consumption. De Boer states, in societies dominated by modern conditions of production, life is presented as an immense accumulation of spectacles. This is a direct reference to Marx in Das Kapital, which states the wealth of those societies in which the capitalist mode of production prevails presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities. De Boer contended that a century after Marx's writings, capitalism, propelled by advances in science and technology, had created a situation where our basic needs for survival could be met. But because of capitalism's need to always find new markets to exploit, we as a culture simply redefined what survival means in contemporary times. De Boer notes that today our objective has shifted towards an enhanced survival, where consumer goods aren't mere wants but have become absolute necessities for our well being in contemporary society. I don't think he is suggesting that we throw away all the modern conveniences of society and go back to the cave. But what he is recognizing is that the machine of capitalism is always selling us to believe that we always need more and need the newest things. Think about what makes us stand in a line overnight to buy the latest iPhone or Air Jordans that come out. Well, De Boer states that there was a shift in culture that happened from having to appearing. All having, and I quote, must now derive its immediate prestige and its ultimate purpose from appearances. In essence, De Boer suggests that our desire for that new phone or shoes doesn't primarily stem from a critical need for the enhanced product performance. Instead, it's driven by our susceptibility, to the belief that it will alter how others perceive us. The analogy often used is the I'm a Mac, I'm a PC advertisement from Apple back in the early 2000s. This campaign had nothing to do with selling a consumer on the quality or merits of an Apple computer versus a PC. Its primary aim was to market a specific lifestyle. Would you prefer to be seen as the uninspiring, boring business type or the fashionable, hip, youthful, and attractive type? The product itself mattered less than the carefully crafted message it conveyed about your identity to the world. In essence, De Boer asserts that late capitalism has driven us to prioritize our image over everything else. Do we really need that new iPhone? Will it significantly improve our phone conversations? Do we really need those new pair of Jordans? Will they really make us play ball like Mike? Or is it all about creating a highly curated fiction of how we want the world to perceive us? This is from The Masters of the Universe, which is a series of portraits of the top earning YouTube stars. They are known as content creators, and their subscriber base earns them millions of dollars in income. YouTube as a platform can give voice to the voiceless, those marginalized voices that would generally be ignored in mainstream media platforms such as television or film. They have an opportunity through YouTube to create content that is entertaining and or educational. For example, Lily Singh and Liza Koshy both bring creativity and intellect to their channels in humorous, thoughtful, and entertaining ways. In addition, they are two examples of how social media can give a voice to the voiceless, especially underrepresented communities that could not historically have the same opportunities in mainstream media. Both are minority women of South Asian ancestry that found a way to be heard without the means of traditional modes of engagement. They are two examples of what the potential of the medium has to offer in the sea of fluff. I present them in the same way that I do the other YouTube personalities that are more vacuous, in my opinion, to not necessarily put a value judgment on them or their content, but simply to present the vast array of possibilities. What I find interesting is what we call content these days and the willingness of millions of people to consume countless hours of other people's daily lives. This includes watching others play video games, put on makeup, go out partying, or unboxing various toys or luxury items. Within this series, I have created portraits of YouTube stars that span the range from serious content creators who use their creativity to produce new forms of engagement with their audience to the absurd. These portraits of YouTube stars are appropriated from the internet and integrated into famous paintings by masters like Rembrandt, David, or Goya to humorously give gravitas to this cultural phenomena. These stars are clearly tapping into something in culture that is of interest to vast majorities. Whom am I to say that what they are creating is not of value? I spoke a few minutes ago about the change that occurred with our leaders from calling us American citizens or the American voter to the American consumer. You may even remember that President Bush, a few weeks after the 9/11 attacks, told us to go shop or consume as a way to heal the country and get back to our normal lives. I would like to stretch out the word consumer. Conceptually, that is a very complex turn on how we are viewed by our leaders and how we view our country. When we look through the eyes of a consumer versus the eyes of a citizen, things change. Our views on each other and the common good changes. When we are consumers, it is about us as individuals and our own needs that are most important. We become brands on social media that are constantly selling and consuming ourselves to each other, telling curated fictions of who we are versus the layers of complexity that are found within every individual. I should note that we all engage in this behavior and have been long before the social media age. Like I stated earlier with the I'm a Mac and I'm a PC advertisement, it isn't merely marketing a piece of equipment to us, but is attempting to convince us to embrace the persona associated with owning an Apple product versus a PC. It's promoting the image we want to project to the world, often disregarding the various facets of individual complexity, including the economic privilege and disposable income required to purchase an Apple product. In De Boer's perspective, the spectacle is solely focused on showcasing a carefully constructed facade of a person devoid of the internal layers of complexity that truly define our authentic selves. He also believes that we are all guilty in the creation of the spectacle, that we are all contributors in a weird, self fulfilling loop where we are all participants to one degree or another and give it fuel to keep it going. From our fascination with celebrity to the language that our leaders use that gets played out in social media to the types of information and entertainment that we are willing to put out into the world and receive, for me as an artist, all of it is incredible source material to speak about the times in which we live. The fixation on appearances and images extends beyond consumerism. It permeates into politics. Are politicians more preoccupied with fabricating a marketable image than with actual policy? In the Trump era, this distinction seems glaringly apparent, but it's not exclusive to him. DeBoer states that the spectacle cannot be understood as a mere visual deception produced by mass media technologies. It is a worldview that has been actually materialized. And somewhere in all this, the notion of civil discourse and dialogue with one another gets lost. This is part of my What Are Words For series, comprising charcoal drawings on paper. The series draws its title from an 80s song by Missing Persons that asks, "What are words for when no one listens?" Using quotes from the former president and his administration, I rendered these texts as William Morris wallpaper designs to question the power of words in contemporary times. I am interested in how we as a culture are able to wallpaper over the content of what our leaders say in public and ignore the gravity of what lies underneath. How we consume without asking questions. Depending on what side of the fence you are on, one can read these works as positive, neutral, or negative. For example, this drawing that has the words individual one is a clear reference to Trump during his first impeachment hearings. But along the bottom is barbed wire that runs across the picture plane. At first, it may read as imprisoning Trump, but depending on one's perspective, because the wire goes across the picture plane, it is either enclosing Trump as the prisoner of his own words, or it can be read as we, the viewer, are the prisoners of his words while he is on the outside free. It is all in the perspective of the viewer and how they read the content, which I think perfectly illustrates the state of contemporary politics today and how culture can, right or wrong, hold multiple truths simultaneously without consideration of the facts. Recall that Trump had pledged an inauguration of unprecedented scale and numbers. His press secretary, Sean Spicer, echoed this assertion from the White House press room. Subsequently, when questioned about the inaccuracies in facts, Kellyanne Conway introduced the term alternative facts. Why would an administration deliberately promote statements that were undeniably untrue, that were clear lies? Why would they engineer daily spectacles for public consumption? Perhaps it serves as a means to redirect public discourse from substantive government policy discussions to the correction of the lie, effectively diverting our attention. And we all consume. Remember that DeBoer posits that in contemporary capitalist society, There's an increasing emphasis on appearances and images at the expense of genuine experiences and verifiable truth. Now, if we scrutinize Trump based on concrete evidence, he reveals a track record of numerous business failures. However, his carefully curated self image projected him as a brilliant business shark, and somehow we, as the public, embraced this image over the intricate reality of his life. His actual business shortcomings were overshadowed by the image of success he projected for us to consume. Heck, he had a gold toilet. He must be a success. This only added to our desire to attain the same level of public success without acknowledging the privilege he had, stemming from his father's wealth, to achieve any of his so called success. The spectacle is an affirmation of appearances and an identification of all human social life with appearances. We all participate in this world of appearances. However, De Boer contends that celebrities, be they sports figures, musicians, or politicians, occupy a distinctive position within the spectacle. Their extravagant lifestyles prompt us to consider our own lives as somewhat lacking in comparison. In other words, we want what they have. As we all know, Trump's wealth is inherited, but when he was running for office, he had created and curated his image for most people to believe that he is a master of the art of the deal, which then continues the lie that we all like to believe, that anyone can make it to the top if only we have drive and ambition. But it is simply not true. Not everyone will be successful. Not everyone will be famous. Not every artist will have a show in the MoMA, nor have a show in any museum. And it has very little to do with the lack of drive and ambition, why so many artists never receive the recognition that they deserve. In my opinion, I think athletics is maybe the only place that a meritocracy actually exists. I think the art market on many levels is a corrupt system, but that is for another lecture. The Trump phenomena was his ability to meld entertainment and politics to craft a spectacle. He meticulously shaped a persona and image of himself that both the media and the public found consumable. And why did he frequently use blatant falsehoods, considering that most politicians aim to project an image of honesty, intelligence, and thoughtfulness, avoiding easily disprovable statements? Well, for Trump, the more audacious his statements and stories, the longer he remained in the limelight. He harnessed the power of a scandal to become a consumable entity, a spectacle. He functions like a gravitational black hole, relentlessly craving attention and media coverage. The Donald Trump spectacle possesses the capability to overshadow and mute other rational or opposing political voices. It's not imperative to be the most qualified candidate or skilled politician. As long as your image or politics can divert the spotlight from other deserving candidates or crucial issues, then you can dominate the stage. The glitter of spectacular distractions provides relief from a tendency towards banalization which dominates modern society the world over. Trump's absurdity and the spectacle surrounding him were far more appealing to the general public than watching politicians on C SPAN delving into the intricacies and details of public policy. So, what effect does the constant lying have on our political discourse? Well, everyone begins to question the truth of everything. We've become conditioned to question everything, hindering the initiation of any meaningful dialogue. How can we possibly come to a consensus on addressing a problem and reaching a solution when we can't even agree on the problem itself? This impedes the possibility of engaging in profound conversations that have the potential to drive societal change. The term fake news fostered skepticism towards traditional news media, while the propagation of alternative facts by Trump presented half of the American population with an alternative worldview. Moreover, if individuals accept the reality of Trump's falsehoods, they can easily rationalize that if he lies, maybe everyone lies, and perhaps there are no truths. Leaving aside the philosophical debate on truth, this leaves no room for negotiation or compromise in addressing real world issues. This pervasive phenomenon generates false equivalencies, as we've seen politicians do, while everything morphs into a spectacle. De Boer aimed for us to recognize and resist these tendencies of the spectacle. However, for many, these tendencies have been accepted as fait accompli without any questioning or resistance because, well, everything is fake, right? Feminism in the Age of Belfies utilizes a portrait by Dan Wynn of Gloria Steinem and Dorothy Pitman Hughes, which is considered to be one of the most iconic photographs of the feminist movement. With this historical portrait as a ground, I'm exploring how to situate the present day phenomena of the Belfie within the context of feminism. Displayed as a large scale banner, when approaching this portrait, the viewer will notice that these historically significant women are composed of tiny Belfies. A Belfie is a self portrait someone takes of their butt, usually to post on Instagram or other social media. Within the majority of Belfies, one can see that the individual is taking the picture themselves by the inclusion of their cell phone camera within the image. In speaking to women about this phenomena, many of them see it as an act of empowerment. I found this interesting because within the visual arts, when I was younger, we had been critical of the exploitation of the female body by male artists due to its historical uses by the male for the male gaze. The body can be seen as a location or site of power, and due to the agency and dissemination of the image by the individual who owns the body, this type of image is now seen as an act of empowerment. I find the Belfie phenomena interesting when attached to social media, which asks the public for likes. This spectacle, created for the spectator to consume and provide likes or a form of currency, uh, in other words, a like becomes a digital currency in this sense. In the age of social media, the individual is the product and their presentation is the branding. Is this a reflection on how far society has progressed with feminism? Is this the new branding of feminism? With the addition of likes, is this a misplaced notion of empowerment? Is the Belfie interpreted the same way by men versus women? Or does it matter in the 21st century? The expanse of social media into our daily lives is a clear sign of the spectacle. We generally present an edited and curated form of ourselves online. Most present ourselves as happy people that are successful and living our best lives, which is very similar to how advertisers sell us on their products. We constantly check our social media for likes while appearing to have enriched, fulfilled lives rather than actively going out and seeking lived experiences. This is evidenced by the high depression rates found in young people that obsessively engage in social media and have fears of missing out. De Boer writes, the spectacle is an affirmation of appearances and an identification of all human social life with appearances. In this context, all aspects of social life warrant scrutiny. While I initially discussed our carefully crafted personas on social media, if we reflect on our everyday lives, it's evident that much of our existence is also tailored for public consumption. Our image and presentation often take precedence over authenticity and genuine experience. Trophy Shelf is a set of trophies given to the most annoying things posted on social media. In a culture that is quick to reward some for the most minor of achievements, this work reflects the absurdity of the process. I think that we can collectively agree on those things that we find annoying about social media, while at the same time be guilty of participating in those same things that we despise. These trophies' surfaces are rendered by the use of a simulation of Vanta Black. Vanta Black is a material developed by Surrey Nanosystems in the United Kingdom and is one of the darkest substances known, absorbing about 99.96% of all visible light. It has been exclusively licensed to artist Anish Kapoor's studio for artistic use, which caused outrage among other artists for the absurdity of monopolizing an artistic material. In retaliation, artist Stuart Semple created a pigment called Better Black that replicates the light absorbing technology of Vanta Black and made it affordable and accessible to all artists. The trophies in this series are painted with this Better Black 2.0 material. These trophies include awards for the best fake news post, or best meal post, or the best humble brag post. The notion of the spectacle has increased in contemporary times more than when De Boer was writing in 1967. The spectacle is found on every screen we look at. It can be viewed on the countless clickbait articles that list the top 10 things you need to do to have an incredible life or successful relationship or what have you. It reduces life to an endless supply of consumables that force us to focus on appearance versus experience. This is a video piece called America the Beautiful, which is a single channel 1080p video with stereo and binaural audio. The video consists of three professional vocalists singing the iconic American songs The Star Spangled Banner, God Bless America, and America the Beautiful. The vocalists are specifically chosen to represent a broad spectrum of diversity in America. As each vocalist attempts to sing their song, they are interrupted by voices uttering reprehensible opinions. The content that is expressed by the voiceover actors is taken verbatim from comments posted onto CNN, Fox, and MSNBC's social media pages about various contemporary news stories. The interrupted comments from voiceover actors include statements like the following, and I'm going to quote directly from the news sites: vaccinations cause autism. This statue offends me. You have to tear it down. That's how it works these days, right? You don't treat Christians and Jews the same way you treat gays, baby killers, and Muslims. The truth never crosses the lips of a Democrat. They are pitiful people. Vote Republican. Your life depends on it. The video plays on multiple layers of meaning by embracing our collective patriotism while reflecting the hypocrisy in our collective conscience, which forces the viewer to engage and resolve these difficult subjects on their own. Does social media allow us to empathize with each other? Does the cloak of anonymity allow us to speak without remorse? Does social media offer a glimpse into our true selves? So I started my talk telling you that I'm an immigrant, and as an artist that uses culture as source material for their art, these are interesting times. De Boer believed that residing in a spectacle driven world alters human conduct and our interpersonal engagements. He contended that these spectacular images actively influence our daily existence and convictions, generating new desires, new objectives, and new priorities. In our contemporary 24-hour news cycle, technology has effectively condensed intricate narratives into easily digestible bite sized segments with minimal effort. It is what I would call engineered news. De Boer would have probably been shocked by our contemporary world, but I think he may have also said, I told you so, when considering how now companies like Facebook and Google sell our personal information and lives as commodifiable assets. Now, art too is not immune from the spectacle. As De Boer states, when culture becomes nothing more than a commodity, it must also become the star commodity of the spectacular society. For De Boer, art is just another phenomena that has been consumed by the spectacle, a selfie just waiting to happen. Most major museums now have summer blockbuster shows. In Houston, we had the launch of the Van Gogh projection show. I wonder how Van Gogh would have felt about his painting becoming a larger than life light projected viewing experience. Is it authentic to his original intent? Is it authentic to the actual viewing of his real paintings where you can walk up and see the surfaces? It's like if I were a chef and I prepared for you this incredible 8-course meal, and you decided to dump all the courses into a large bowl and mush it all together. Would that be an authentic experience of the meal I had prepared for you? Well, on some level it would. You would have an authentic experience of eating mush, but it wouldn't be what I as the chef had intended for you to experience. And we can never know how Van Gogh would feel about this show, but we can be certain that his work presented in this fashion will make for a great backdrop for thousands of selfies. So, where do we go from here? Well, for De Boer, he felt that we should walk outside our door, get lost in our communities, and have active, meaningful experiences. He thought focusing locally was a potential solution to the problem of the spectacle. But that was his thinking 50 years ago. I think there are some interesting things happening now that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and it revolves around decentralization. There are two ways that I'm thinking about the Bitcoin and NFT phenomena. One view is that in all late stage economic cycles, there is a desperate push to try and reach for one last opportunity for capitalistic profit. It indicates when markets are blowing off their tops in exaggerated exuberance, the final attempt to draw the last drop of blood from a stone. Could this be where we are in the last stages of this current economic cycle? Is this capitalism's last attempt to hold on to the status quo as we know it? Let me offer another option. Could this be the start of a massive decentralization of economies, art, and society where power is not held with a select few to control the monetary system like the Federal Reserve or art galleries for sales, but power is dispersed to the masses? In essence, does decentralization conceptually operate like De Boer would have wanted for us to act locally? I don't know the answer, but I do remember this from back in the late 80s when the personal computer was introduced to the world. Back then, some of you more senior faculty may remember the art world was very resistant to accept art created on the computer as real art. I can recall giving several talks back in the 90s at professional conferences to try and defend and convince an audience that art created on the computer was just as valid a medium as more traditional forms of art making. And look at where we are now in the art world. So only time will tell how all this plays out. Once again, I have no answers for you, but my interests, like my art, lay in the questions. Thank you very much for your time.